I build things for a living. Houses, additions, commercial light construction, the occasional custom garage or workshop for someone with more money than they know what to do with. I have been in this trade for 27 years, and the single most important thing that trade has taught me, more important than any building code or material specification, is this. Every problem has a solution. You just have to be willing to think about the problem long enough to find it. I tell you this because it is the only way to understand what happened with the golf cart. We moved into Pinehurst Commons 4 years ago. My wife, Renata, and I had been living in a smaller house across town for 12 years, and when Renata's mother passed and left us a modest inheritance, we decided to put it towards something better, a bigger lot, a 3-car garage, which I needed for my work truck and tools, a quiet street. Pinehurst Commons is a semi-private residential community in a mid-sized city in Georgia. It has about 300 homes, a community pool, a small fitness center, and a network of internal paved paths originally designed for maintenance vehicles, but now used extensively by residents with golf carts, of which there are many. Golf carts are extremely popular in Pinehurst Commons. On a warm Saturday morning, you can count 40 or 50 of them moving around the community at any given time, cruising to the pool or the clubhouse, or just rolling slowly through the streets, the way retired people in mild climates do when they have nowhere urgent to be and consider this a feature rather than a problem. I have nothing against golf carts. I want to be clear about that. My issue was never with golf carts as a category. My issue was with one specific golf cart, owned by one specific person, parked in one specific location, with one specific and entirely intentional regularity. My driveway. Diane Prescott lived directly across the street from us. She was, at a rough estimate, in her mid-60s, recently widowed, and in possession of the kind of confident territorial energy that can be charming in small doses and genuinely exhausting in sustained exposure. She had lived in Pinehurst Commons for 11 years and had accumulated, in that time, what I can only describe as a proprietorial relationship with the neighborhood. She knew everyone, knew everything about everyone, served on 3 community committees simultaneously, and moved through Pinehurst Commons with the unhurried authority of someone who considers the entire community an extension of their own living room. The golf cart was a custom burgundy club car with cream-colored seats and a small wicker basket on the front dash that always contained, for reasons I never fully determined, a single gardening glove. Just one, always the left hand. It was, by Pinehurst Commons standards, a very nice golf cart. It was also, by any reasonable measure, not supposed to be in my driveway. The first time it happened was about 3 weeks after we moved in. I came out on a Saturday morning to load materials into my work truck and found the Burgundy Club car parked at the base of my driveway, blocking access to the street. Not partially blocking, fully blocking, positioned dead center with about 18 inches of clearance on either side, not enough to get the truck past. I looked at it for a moment. Then I walked across the street and knocked on Diane's door. She answered quickly, as people do when they are already watching from inside. "Oh, that's mine," she said, before I had said anything. "I just parked it there for a moment while I got my things together." "I need to get my truck out," I said. "I'll move it in just a minute," she said. She moved it in about 6 minutes, rolling it back across the street to her own driveway with the deliberate speed of someone who is making a subtle point about how their time is organized. I told myself it was a one-time thing. You already know it was not a one-time thing. Over the following 6 weeks, the golf cart appeared in my driveway 11 more times, not always early morning, sometimes midday, once at 7:30 in the evening when I was trying to move the truck for a 6 a.m. job start the next day. The duration varied from 4 minutes to, on one memorable occasion, 2.5 hours, during which Diane was apparently hosting a committee meeting inside her house and had simply used my driveway as overflow parking without asking. 2.5 hours. I knocked on her door that time. She answered with the specific expression of a person being interrupted from something important. "Diane," I said, "your cart has been in my driveway for 2.5 hours. "I have guests," she said, gesturing vaguely at the interior of her house. "That's not really my concern," I said. "It's just a golf cart, Nathan," she said. The use of my first name, delivered in a specific tone that implied I was behaving unreasonably, was a technique she deployed reliably and well. "It's my driveway," I said. She moved the cart. I went back inside and told Renata what had happened. Renata, who is a significantly more patient person than I am, suggested I write a polite note and put it on Diane's door, explaining the issue and asking her to keep the cart on her own property. I wrote the note. I put it on Diane's door. The cart appeared in my driveway 2 days later. I filed a complaint with the HOA. The HOA sent Diane a courtesy notice. The cart appeared in my driveway 4 days after the courtesy notice. I filed a second complaint. The HOA sent a second notice. The cart appeared in my driveway 6 days after the second notice. I want you to understand something about this pattern. It was not accidental. Diane Prescott was not an absent-minded person who kept forgetting where her driveway was. She was a woman who had lived in the same house for 11 years and could navigate the community paths with her eyes closed. The parking in my driveway was a choice, repeated and deliberate, in the specific manner of someone who has decided that the rules apply to other people and that persistence will eventually wear down resistance. I had built enough things to know that some structures hold and some don't. I decided my position was going to hold. I bought a security camera and installed it on my garage, pointed at the driveway. I documented every incident with date, time, and photograph. I opened a folder on my computer and labeled it, with perhaps slightly too much satisfaction, the Diane file. The Diane file grew. I submitted a formal written complaint to the HOA board with photographic evidence of 14 separate incidents over a 10-week period. The HOA board, to their credit, took it somewhat seriously. They sent Diane a formal written warning, which was a step up from the courtesy notices. The warning stated that continued unauthorized use of a neighbor's driveway constituted trespassing under Georgia property law, and that further violations could result in fines. Diane attended the next HOA board meeting. I know what happened at that meeting because Terry Albright, who was on the board and who had hired me 2 years before to build a sunroom addition and therefore felt a certain loyalty in my direction, told me afterward. Diane had stood up and explained, in a presentation that Terry described as remarkably well organized for something that wrong, that my driveway was the only safe place to pause her golf cart when she needed to check on the mailbox cluster located at the corner of my lot, that she was simply being a responsible driver by not leaving the cart unattended in the street, and that she had tried to be a good neighbor by keeping these pauses brief. The board had listened. The board had thanked her. The board had subsequently sent me a letter suggesting that both parties make good faith efforts to resolve the matter neighborly. I read that letter. Then I opened the Diane file and added it. What happened next was not planned in the way that a contractor plans a foundation pour. It was not engineered in advance with full specifications and a schedule. It came together as the best solutions sometimes do, from a combination of circumstance and the specific kind of patience that breaks not with anger but with clarity. It was a Thursday morning in late spring. Renata had a cardiology follow-up appointment at 9:15. Nothing alarming, a routine 6-month check following a procedure the previous year, but the kind of appointment that matters, the kind that you do not miss. I had my truck loaded the night before for a job site visit afterward. I was up at 7, coffee made, dog fed, everything organized. At 7:45, I walked out the front door to warm up the truck. The Burgundy Club car was in my driveway. Dead center. I stood there for a moment. Then I walked across the street and knocked on Diane's door. No answer. I knocked again. No answer. I called her number, which I had because we were neighbors and neighbors have each other's numbers for emergencies. Straight to voicemail. I walked back to my driveway and stood next to the cart and looked at the clock on my phone. 7:49. Renata's appointment was at 9:15, 22 minutes away by car. We needed to leave by 8:30 at the latest, ideally 8:15. I knocked on Diane's door 2 more times over the next 20 minutes. Nothing. I called once more. Voicemail. At 8:10, I was standing in my driveway with a medical appointment ticking and a golf cart that was not mine sitting between me and the street and a neighbor who was either deliberately unavailable or genuinely not home, neither of which changed my situation. I called Renata inside and told her we had a problem. She came out, looked at the cart, looked at me, and said, with the calm of a woman who has been married to a contractor for 23 years and has learned that he will find a solution, "What are you going to do?" I thought for about 15 seconds. And then I called Big Roy. Roy Castellano is a heavy equipment operator I have known for 19 years. He runs a small crane and rigging company that does a lot of residential construction work in the area, setting roof trusses, placing HVAC equipment, lifting prefab components into place. He is called Big Roy because he is 6'4" and around 280 pounds, and because there is apparently also a regular Roy somewhere in the county whose existence requires the distinction. Big Roy answers his phone at all hours because construction does not keep a 9-to-5 schedule. He answered on the second ring. "Roy," I said, "I have a golf cart blocking my driveway. I need it moved." A pause. "Moved where?" Roy said. I looked at Diane's house across the street. I looked at her roof. Her roof was a low-pitch architectural shingle, maybe a Fort Wells slope, with a flat section over the garage that was, from a rigging perspective, essentially a platform. "You see the house directly across from me," I said. Another pause. "Nathan," Roy said slowly. "The flat section over the garage," I said. "What do you think?" The longest pause yet. Then Roy said, "Is it your cart?" "No," I said. "Is it on your property?" "Yes," I said. "Has it been left on your property without permission?" 14 documented times, I said. I could hear Roy breathing. Then I heard what I can only describe as the sound of a very large man making a decision. "I can be there in 40 minutes, he said. "I need to leave in 5, I said. "Can you manage it without me there?" "I know where you live," he said. "I'll call you when it's done." I thanked him. Then I went inside and told Renata to get her coat. We backed out around the golf cart with about 14 inches of clearance on the passenger side, Renata monitoring from her window, and made it to the street without incident. We made the appointment with 8 minutes to spare. Renata's results were fine. And while we were sitting in the waiting room, my phone buzzed with a text from Big Roy. It contained a photograph. I showed it to Renata. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at me. "Nathan," she said. "Yes," I said. "That's on her roof," she said. "Yes," I said. She looked at the photograph again. Then she started laughing, quietly, in the way she does when something is both completely unreasonable and completely inevitable at the same time. "The wicker basket is still on it," she said. "Roy is thorough," I said. We sat in the waiting room for another few minutes. Outside in Pinehurst Commons, a burgundy club car with cream-colored seats and a small wicker basket on the front dash was sitting on the flat garage section of Diane Prescott's roof. Perfectly level. Completely undamaged. Just elevated. We got home at 11:40. I parked in my now completely clear driveway, which felt, I will be honest with you, genuinely wonderful. Just a smooth, unobstructed pull from the street to the garage. The small pleasure of a thing working the way it is supposed to work. Renata went inside. I stood at the end of my driveway for a moment and looked across the street. The golf cart was up there. It looked from street level, almost deliberately placed. The burgundy color against the gray shingles was actually quite striking. The cream seats caught the late morning light. The wicker basket was visible, the single gardening glove still inside it, because of course it was. It looked, if I am being completely honest, a little bit like art. I went inside and made lunch. I was halfway through a sandwich when I heard, from outside, a sound that I can only describe as the specific vocal register of a woman encountering something she did not expect on her roof. I went to the front window. Diane Prescott was standing in her driveway, looking up. She was wearing a sun hat, which suggested she had been in her backyard or garden, which explained why she had not answered the door. She was holding a small pair of gardening shears in one hand and her phone in the other, and she was looking at her roof with an expression that I had not previously seen on a human face. It was the expression of a person whose reality has just been rearranged in a way they cannot immediately explain. She turned slowly and looked across the street. I was standing back from the window, far enough that I could see her without being obviously visible. A contractor's habit. You learn to observe a job site from a neutral position. She turned back to her roof. She looked at her phone. She made a call. I could not hear the conversation from inside my house, but I watched it. She was animated, gesturing upward with the hand holding the shears. Whoever she had called appeared to require some convincing that what she was describing was accurate. She made a second call. Then she came across the street and knocked on my door. I counted to 4 before answering. She looked up close, like someone who had organized their expression carefully on the way across the street and was working to maintain it. "Nathan," she said, "my golf cart is on my roof." "I know," I said. "Did you do this?" she said. "I had it moved," I said. "It was blocking my driveway." "You put it on my roof," she said. "I had it placed on the flat section above your garage," I said. "That section is rated for HVAC equipment, typically in the range of 400 to 600 pounds. Your cart is approximately 560 pounds. It's well within load tolerance. I calculated it." She stared at me. "You calculated the load tolerance," she said. "I'm a contractor," I said. A long pause. "Nathan," she said, with the careful tone of someone trying to find the legal problem with something, "you cannot put my property on my roof." "I relocated your property from my driveway to your property," I said. "Your cart was on my property without permission. I had it returned to your property. I chose the specific location on your property, yes, but your cart is on your property." She opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. "It's on my roof," she said. "The flat section above the garage," I said again. "Structurally appropriate. No damage to the vehicle, no damage to your roof. Big Roy is very precise." Another very long pause. "Who is Big Roy?" she said. "A colleague," I said. She looked at me for a long moment with the expression of a person who has just realized that they have been engaged in a conflict with someone who was not playing the same game they thought they were playing. Then she said, "How do I get it down?" "You can call a crane company," I said. "Roy would probably do it for a reasonable rate since he's already familiar with the site. Or if you contact your HOA, they may have resources for property recovery situations. I can give you Roy's number." She looked at me. "You'd give me his number," she said. "Of course," I said. "I don't have any interest in your golf cart staying on your roof. I just needed my driveway clear." Another pause. "Your driveway is clear now," she said. Yes, I said, it is. She took Roy's number. She went back across the street. I went back inside and finished my sandwich. Roy came back the following morning and brought the cart down in about 40 minutes. He texted me when it was done and included a second photograph. The cart back on Diane's driveway, apparently undamaged, wicker basket and single glove intact. I sent Roy a generous bonus on top of the call-out rate. Now I want to tell you what happened after, because the story doesn't end with the cart coming down from the roof. The real story, the part that matters, starts after. Diane did not speak to me for 2 weeks. This was, I will admit, not entirely unpleasant. But at the end of those 2 weeks, she knocked on my door again. I answered. She was not carrying gardening shears this time. She was carrying a covered dish. It was a casserole. I looked at the casserole. I looked at her. I talked to my daughter, she said. Her daughter lived in Nashville. I knew this because Diane mentioned her frequently at neighborhood events. She said, I owe you an apology. I waited. I used your driveway too many times, she said, without asking, and you asked me to stop, and I didn't, and that was inconsiderate. She said it without a great deal of emotional flourish, in the tone of a woman delivering a prepared statement that she has committed to delivering accurately, even if it is uncomfortable. I appreciate that, I said. The casserole is chicken and rice, she said. Renata mentioned once that you liked it. I looked at the casserole. Then I took it. Thank you, Diane, I said. She nodded once, the nod of a woman who has completed a difficult task with dignity. She turned to go. Then she turned back. The roof thing, she said. Yes, I said. Did you actually calculate the load tolerance in advance? She said. Yes, I said. A pause. Before or after you were irritated, she said. I thought about this. During, I said. She looked at me for a moment. And then, for the first time in 4 years of living across the street from each other, Diane Prescott laughed. Not a polite social laugh. A genuine one, starting somewhere deep and arriving at the surface with an honesty that I had not expected from her. You're a strange man, Nathan Garvey, she said. I'm a contractor, I said. She shook her head, still smiling slightly, and went back across the street. The casserole was excellent. Renata had 2 portions. Now here is what I want to tell you about the aftermath, because this is the part that surprised me most. About a month after the casserole, Diane came to me with a project. She had been thinking, she said, about getting a proper structure built on the side of her house. A small covered cart port, dedicated parking for the golf cart, protected from weather, clearly on her property, with a good sight line to the street. She had sketched it out on graph paper, modest structure, nothing complicated. She asked if I could build it. I looked at the sketch. Then I looked at her. Professional rate, I said. Obviously, she said. I built it in 4 days the following month. Clean little structure, pressure-treated posts, metal roof panel, concrete apron. Practical, proportional, exactly what she needed. On the day I finished, she came out to inspect it and walked around it twice with the careful eye of someone who knows what they want. Good work, she said. Good design, I said. Because it was, her sketch had been efficient and sensible. She put the golf cart in it. It fit perfectly. The cart has been in that cart port every day since, as far as I can tell. My driveway has been clear every day since. I want to be careful about what lesson I draw from this, because I don't think the lesson is that you should put your neighbor's property on their roof when you have a dispute. That is not the universal solution. Most situations require a different approach. More patience, more conversation, more documentation, and formal process. But I do think there is something true in this story about what happens when you match creative problem-solving to a creative problem. Diane was not a bad person. She was a person who had decided, at some point, that persistence meant she would eventually win the driveway situation, and that her social position in the neighborhood protected her from real consequences. She was comfortable with the normal tools of conflict, the notes, the HOA complaints, the polite confrontations, because she had navigated all of those before and they had not changed her behavior. What she had not expected was a crane. Not because the crane was aggressive. It wasn't. Nothing was damaged. No one was threatened. No law was broken. I had checked carefully because I check things. What the crane did was demonstrate, without shouting or escalation or drama, that the normal playbook did not apply to this situation. That the person across the street was not going to be worn down by persistence. That some problems get solved sideways. And sometimes, when a problem gets solved sideways, the person on the other side of it respects you more afterward than they did before. Diane and I are, at this point, something that I would carefully describe as friendly acquaintances. She stops to talk when we are both out front. She recommended me to two of her friends for remodeling work, both of which I completed. She brings vegetables from her garden occasionally and leaves them on the porch when we're not home. The single left-hand gardening glove is still in the wicker basket on the front of the golf cart. I have never asked about it. Some things are better left as mysteries. What I know is this. My driveway is clear. Renata makes it to her appointments. And somewhere in Pinehurst Commons, a small covered carport sits on the side of a house, built precisely and painted to match, holding a burgundy golf cart with cream seats. A problem solved. Properly. Eventually. I'm Nathan Garvey. I build things. And if you have a neighbor situation that requires creative structural thinking, or just a story about the moment you finally decided enough was enough, drop it in the comments. I read all of them. See you next time.